SpongeBob SquarePants is an important show to a lot of people. It may just seem like Nickelodeon's flagship series, but it means so much more to me. SpongeBob is what started my appreciation for animation. Never before had a cartoon entertained me and made me laugh as much as SpongeBob did. And for a while, it was the only show I ever watched. I'm very glad that this is the show that I have the fondest memories of, because the episodes that I watched a decade ago still hold up really well today. It would be simple for me to recommend the show to you and then end the review here, but there is so much more to the show than it may seem. If you know anything about SpongeBob, you would know that it's changed in quality a couple of times during its near 18-year run. After creator Stephen Hillenburg stepped down as the director of the series after Nickelodeon wanted to continue the series past its first film, SpongeBob has been on the decline, at least in the eyes of many fans. And while I personally haven't revisited the low point of the series in years, which is considered to be seasons 6 through 8, I can tell you that I've always thought those seasons have paled in comparison to the first 3 to 5. But after the release of the second SpongeBob film, Sponge Out of Water, which I found to be pretty good, the show has taken an interesting turn. Stephen Hillenburg has returned to run the show starting with the second half of the 9th season. But why only the second half? Well, production of season 9 was stopped in order for the crew of the show to work on Sponge Out of Water. Hillenburg returned to write the story of the film and decided to stay with the show afterwards. The reception of the episodes produced after his return have been mixed. Some fans think that the show is just as good as it was in its first few seasons, while others think that it's just as bad as the seasons that came before it. In this 3-video series, I'll be analyzing all 29 episodes of what fans have dubbed Season 9B. But this project is so big that I cannot tackle it alone. Please welcome Noah Spongy!
Thank you for that lovely yet somewhat rushed introduction of me. While I don't have a widespread knowledge of every SpongeBob fan's opinion, even with the open sandbox that is the internet browser, I do notice merely a small amount of the SpongeBob fanbase watching the episodes in this current era and giving them a positive and fair judgment. This upsets me because the modern SpongeBob is complete garbage mindset has been stuffed into people's heads by big reviewers such as Mr. Enter, who has admitted to love this new era, and smaller critics such as Avis Reviews and Alpha J, who have directed people to think the show is still bad, which takes away a fair judgment from many people that I tried my hardest to respect in the community. While I do frequently spread a positive opinion about the post-sequel era over on my channel, I only have 2.5 thousand subscribers as of writing this, so I don't have much of an ability to spread any word. Since Nick does have a slightly larger fan base and is someone I definitely respect as a critic, I found it very humbling to be allowed to help him out with something that might spread the word even more. Now, enough rambling. I think what you're all here to see is for us to give you some overviews on the first few Season 9B episodes. To begin this 3-part serial. There's your segue, Nick. Back to you.
This half-season begins with the episode Lost in Bikini Bottom. The plot finds SpongeBob taking a shortcut on his way to work for no other reasons besides Patrick saying his opinion on shortcuts.
There's always a shortcut.
The shortcut ends up taking SpongeBob through an unfamiliar part of town, filled with soda-drinking loiterers and broken fire hydrants. It's a pretty memorable adventure, and a good departure from the been there, done that feeling that was incredibly strong in the first half of Season 9 and Sponge Out of Water. But due to SpongeBob being back to the naive optimist that we all know and love, the episode still feels sort of familiar. The idea that he would take a riskier path to his destination just to have the opportunity to get to work a few minutes earlier fits his character perfectly, and moments like that are why I got so close to the character in the first place. Some of the jokes and characters were pretty funny, like SpongeBob's watch or Scott's pedicab, and some of the backgrounds were just beautiful. But despite all of this, I find this episode to be just alright. While I dig the premise, I wasn't completely in love with a few other things. The 2 fake-out moments that SpongeBob encounters felt really forced, and were jokes I had already seen before on the show. Additionally, Squidward's moment at the end of the episode where he desperately tries to get sent home from work felt tacked on, like the writers needed to fill a few extra minutes but couldn't think of anything worthwhile to spend it on. Overall, it's a good episode, but it could have been refined a bit more.
I definitely agree with you, on most parts. The plot and execution, while a bit dry, play off very well, and it feels almost Season 1-ish, especially at the beginning. Squidward's crazy moments throughout the half-season are either likable or something I could care less for. This time was only at the end, so it's a bit more passable, but it's still something that bugs me because his actions at the end completely contradict what we know the character would act like and how he acted in the beginning of the episode. I mean, it's much less insulting of a lack of continuity unlike a moment where the distance between SpongeBob and Squidward and the Krusty Krab completely changes between shots, but it's still pretty off. Overall, it's an episode that leaves me off with much more of a positive feeling than negative. Up next is the episode Tudor Sauce, which, if you don't know, is one of the highest episodes in my top 10 favorites. The episode adds something new to the plot thread of SpongeBob attempting to get a driver's license and puts Mr. Krabs in the situation, who has a much rougher and less lucid outlook on the whole boating game. This episode mainly rolls with the running gag of SpongeBob somehow crashing his boat into the Krusty Krab multiple times, with many brilliantly creative variations of just one simple gag. There isn't much of a story, but that makes it open to more gags, which I think was the crew's intent. Only complaints I have are some slow pacing near the end after how fast the first 3/4 went, and a couple scenes that began to just feel like filler, but they still felt creative. Only scene that really bugged me was the scene where Mr. Krabs was small talking with the policeman. There are some good lines, but it goes on for way too long and way too slowly, feeling like it's just trying to fill up the time it has left. Despite its flaws, it's overall a fantastic episode on my part.
I don't want to disappoint you, Noah, but I feel that the episode was just a bit under Lost in Bikini Bottom. The concept had promise and a lot of the gags were really funny, but the attempts for the episode to have a plot were kind of lackluster, as the final thing that got Mr. Krabs sent back to boating school didn't feel very special. That may have been the point of that scene, but it feels like something bigger could have been done here, like Mr. Krabs giving up on SpongeBob as a student for the sake of his restaurant. I thought that was where the episode was going to go when I first saw it, but instead it went for a joke rather than a completely satisfying ending. The ending also breaks the nice flow that the episode had, as everything screeches to a halt to have a scene much longer than the others. I enjoy the majority of Tudor Sauce, but its poor structure and ending keep me from calling it one of my favorites. The next episode is Squid Plus One, and it's strangely one of the most refreshing episodes of SpongeBob I've seen in a while. Squidward is the focus of this one, and he tries to find someone who can be his plus one to a fancy schmancy art show. Unlike most Squidward episodes, the focus is mostly turned away from his adventures with SpongeBob and turned towards the fact that he has no friends. Squid tries to befriend both Larry the Lobster, who has his first major appearance since season 7, and the Mailman, and does a better job communicating with the latter than SpongeBob ever did. Both of the interactions Squidward has with these characters end the same, but that's the part of the episode that feels kind of lazy. Squidward loses his potential friends when he or the other makes fun of something the other enjoys. The second time this happens, Squidward is the one to make fun of Larry's love of protein shakes. Again, this may be ironic, especially since right before Squidward offends Larry, he points out how offensive he found the mailman's comment towards him. But I wish that these two situations weren't so similar to each other. It may be a small complaint, but it certainly affected my feelings on the episode a little. Although the ending is pretty perfect in my opinion, as it brings together two elements of the episode that were already established, is pretty funny, and gives Squidward a good ending. It's certainly no Band Geeks, but Squid Plus One is up there with some of the best Squidward episodes, despite my dislike for a small plot point.
Squid Plus One definitely has some positives, as well as teaching a fun, useless fact about invitations, but overall, a lot of the episode feels either awkward or slow, with only a few crowning moments. I'm mainly talking about Squidward angering Larry and making Norton upset at the very beginning, which both just felt uncomfortable in a way I can't really explain. Speaking of which, Norton the Mailman is a really fun way to build upon a character we wouldn't really care about until now. He's introverted in a relatable way, and we get some great lines out of him. But that's still a small bit of the episode, as Norton does disappear from the episode completely around halfway in. I do love the ending though. It makes sense considering both Squidward's personality and the foreshadowing both at the beginning and before the reveal scene. It all leads up to a mixed but still harmless episode. Next episode is The Executive Treatment, which is a really fun one. I love all the jokes stereotyping random corporations where you rarely understand what they do, as well as the business people only saying business, business throughout the episode. But Patrick really sells the episode for me. All the gags they make with him messing business stuff up are really clever, especially with stuff in the montage. And the fact that Patrick only got stuck in this mess because he wanted a Krabby Patty makes it all the more funnier and pathetic. Also, Frank Ferrante does a great job as the stockholder eel, and overall the eel is a very entertaining character. Nothing else to say except, this is a Patrick episode that really succeeds. Aside from SpongeBob's design and proximity in the end scene, like, what were the storyboarders thinking?
This was the first new SpongeBob episode in a while to really make me laugh. Patrick has had kind of a rebirth in Season 9B. He too is back to his pre-movie personality and has some of the season's best episodes.
Save for the fishbowl, but even then, it's pretty tame.
The executive treatment is a great example of this, as Patrick's naivete and his futile attempts to get a sandwich had a big smile plastered on my face. The ending is really funny too, and overall it's just a really solid episode, and the best that we've talked about so far in my book. Company Picnic is another alright episode, but again, a lot of its problems stem from its poor plotting. The episode takes a while to get going, and once the Company Picnic actually begins, there are a few good gags. But then Plankton kinda hijacks the plot, and not much really happens for a while. The stuff with Plankton's picnic is alright, but there's a huge problem with the reveal that his picnic was fake. SpongeBob finds out the truth when a candy pen phases through one of Plankton's robots, and he discovers that everything was covered by holograms. I can suspend my disbelief enough to believe that the holograms were able to cover everything so well, but I can't accept the fact that this reveal was way too convenient. When other real objects phased through Plankton's robots before, nothing happened. Unlike what happened with the pen. I don't hate this episode for this big detail, but it doesn't help that I find the rest of Company Picnic to be pretty unspectacular and slow. Except for, ironically, the slow motion scene, which is just pure gold.
There's a candy pen headed straight for your eye due to my act of swatting it away without first considering the trajectory. Oh, I wish I could get my words out faster, but everything's in slow motion.
I definitely agree that this is a slow episode with a few lackluster scenes. Heck, when I first watched this, I was mainly thrown off by how Season 9A-ish SpongeBob looked, and overall how slowly the dialogue went in a couple scenes. Also, Plankton's side of the episode really wasn't needed, and the story could have gone somewhere much better without it. However, I think there are some good moments in here, as well as some good dialogue between the characters, and the fact that they try to make them work off of each other quite a bit more. But still, this is something that, while I wouldn't mind watching again, certainly isn't something I'd check out on impulse. Alright, just immediately getting this out of the way, Pull Up a Barrel is incredible. Just starting the paragraph off with a bang there. Not only does it finally show a bit of Mr. Krabs' days in the Navy, which is something fans have been dying to see, it has great visuals, great action, great story, great humor, and is overall just what the fans wanted, which is why I'm very sad it doesn't get as much attention as it deserves. But yeah, simply put, this is a terrifically done episode that I never thought that they would do. Man, I feel like I should elaborate more, but that's really all I have to say. Nick, cover for me while I resort to the fetal position.
It's taken me a while to realize how good this episode is. Right now, I would usually be complaining about a plot point or something I don't find to be very significant. But besides the fact that I wish we saw original characters in Mr. Krabs' story instead of the regular ones,
well, since the story's visuals come from SpongeBob's imagination, according to Vincent Waller, I don't think it's possible.
I'm just nitpicking. While it's not a super funny episode and it takes a little too long for the plot to get going, Pull Up a Barrel is still a very likable and fun episode, and something we don't see much of on this show. Although I am kind of disappointed that the ship Mr. Krabs was cooking on was not the SS Diarrhea.
Anyway, funny how we're both at a loss of complaints for once. Pretty, rare thing.
Sanctuary! Exclamation point! Probably has the most solid plot out of all of the episodes we've soaked up so far. SpongeBob goes insane when picking up one stray snail leads to his whole house being flooded with them, in what is essentially a reverse of Have You Seen the Snail subplot. It has some pretty good jokes too, like with Patrick turning himself into a snail to get SpongeBob's attention, and the stuff that happens when SpongeBob basically becomes a crazy cat lady. But the thing that brings this episode down for me is there isn't quite enough funny stuff here for my liking. It may be due to the fact that there's a lot of plot going on in this episode. It handles it all really well, but so much needs to be set up and concluded, and it leads to the jokes being put on the sidelines. One more thing of note is Squidward's allergy to snails. Half of me likes it, and half of me hates it. I like how the episode tries to explain it and how it causes Squidward to turn into a gigantic blob, but if this is the case, then why was the allergy never brought up in episodes like Once Bitten? And why did Squidward once own something he was allergic to? Yeah, I know that SpongeBob sucks at continuity, but it felt like a poorly done attempt to squeeze some extra comedy out of the episode.
Despite Bob Barker's poor acting chops and Squidward's contrived allergies just trying to add some other conflict in, this is a creepily fun episode that's great to watch around Halloween, or any time for that matter. Also, the Hunchback reference, while strange, is very cool. What else can I say except, thank you, please?
No, thank you, please.
What's Eating Patrick is another example of a great Patrick episode. Patrick really feels like someone you can feel sympathetic towards, and he has a big thing to uphold. He has the whole city counting on him. All of the things along the way, all the conflicts and twists and turns, as well as a cute little boy helping Patrick proceed his way, make this a very fun and satisfying Karate Kid-esque underdog story that puts Patrick in an incredibly likable light.
Patrick has a pretty fun journey in this episode that is perfect for his character and has a satisfying conclusion. I could do without the last second of the episode that throws in a semi-tasteless joke, but other than that, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed it so much that I won't go into detail about the one little plot element I found that bugged me, which in this case was how Mr. Krabs goes from knowing nothing about Oswald McNulty to telling his whole life story in an instant. Oops, I did it again! Going from one Patrick episode to another brings us to Patrick exclamation point! The game. This is quite the episode, and I'm a little conflicted on it. I find the first half of it to be hilarious. Patrick's attempts to make a new game are some of the highlights of the season. But the gags slow down in the second half, where SpongeBob, Squidward, and Sandy all play Patrick's game. Outside of some visual gags, not much really made me laugh, although I did like how Squidward kept ending up in jail. That honestly felt kind of relatable to games like Monopoly. The second half isn't boring enough for me to call it a bad episode, but combined with the fantastic first couple of minutes, I think that Patrick exclamation point! The game evens out to be just a good episode.
I absolutely agree with you on this. This plot could have gone a much more exciting direction. Maybe have Patrick sell and manufacture his game to complete success, leaving Squidward in shock. Sure, it would have to be reset by the end, but that would be easy if you consider the 15 minutes of fame saying. But yeah, taking away my crazy ideas, this episode has its moments, but there were lots of parts with nothing happening, as you can't get much mileage out of cartoon characters playing a board game, no matter how crazy you make the rules. I only slightly agree with people saying that this is a Squidward torture episode, as the jokes they make with leaving him in despair with nothing to do are either hit or miss, plus throwing Squidward in actual jail just felt like too much. Also, I didn't really find Patrick to be a jerk in this episode, just a dumb character not knowing much about how to make rules for a game, so seeing him get beaten up just didn't leave me with a good feeling. Especially considering the beginning when he had such a whole heart. Overall, it's watchable, but the bad mixes in with the good just a bit too much. The final episode that we're going to cover in this video is The Sewers of Bikini Bottom. This is the first episode written by Kaz, who most notably worked on Season 3, so it's really cool seeing a pre-movie writer come back, even if his recent episodes aren't exactly perfect. Getting into the actual episode, I like how it has a subplot added into the main plot. It's paced well, and the way it all comes together makes sense. The subplot is even more of a plus to me because it introduces two of my favorite one-time characters in a while, Krupski and Charlton Hawkfish. Both characters pull off great personalities and enjoyably hammy performances. They're very fun to watch, and they get as much screen time as they deserve. The main plot, while it has some cool bonding moments between SpongeBob and Squidward, doesn't have much substance besides some funny lines. Overall, the story works and there's some great performances and jokes, but it also has quite a bit of dragging moments, and some out-of-character scenes like Squidward suddenly enjoying something he found irresponsible, and Mr. Krabs being excited to watch the cheerleaders at halftime. Seriously though, in a certain context, that's just really weird, especially since Mr. Krabs is pretty old. I really don't know how else to conclude my thoughts besides saying it's another mixed bag.
You don't usually see a SpongeBob episode have a plot as complex as this one does. The episode is pretty packed with stuff, but it's also paced really well. Something happens for almost every second, but it never feels like it's moving too fast. Sadly, only the subplot at the stadium really made me laugh, and the main plot with SpongeBob and Squidward was fun, but not unique or very funny. To make a long story short, The Sewers of Bikini Bottom has both a really good plot and an alright plot, which kinda reminds me of Patrick the Game. I will say that this one is a little better for having more unique settings and characters, but they both average out to being about good episodes.
And that ends part 1 of our Season 9B retrospective. In part 2, we will be talking about the episodes from SpongeBob Longpants through Layman Fortune. Until then, thank you for watching and stay tuned. Now enjoy this custom-made credits music. Thumbs are opposable, thumbs are great. We share them with the monkeys and with the apes. You can grab, you can tie, you can pinch a cheek, but without your thumbs, you're all thumbs. All thumbs, no thumbs, busted up your thumbs. Sucking on your pinky would sure look dumb. You'll never hitch a ride or pull out a plum. Without your thumbs, you're all thumbs. All thumbs, no thumbs, feels like a crime. Can't pull on a zipper or flip a dime. And forget about chopsticks, you'll starve every time. Without your thumbs, you're all thumbs, 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 thumbs. Without your thumbs, you're